But I first want to take a look at how this all came about. You know, I've had a lot of people going back, doing a post-mortem on this, saying, what happened? You know, what's the matter? The Europeans, especially the Germans, very angry at the Tory party. Why did they allow this referendum on whether they were going to have independence? Interestingly enough, it wasn't really their idea. Yes, they proposed it because they saw Nigel Farage and UKIP coming up in their rearview mirror. But where did it happen? When did it happen? Well, we learned that it happened back in May of 2012, about 4 years before they had the election. It was after an economic summit in Chicago, and then Prime Minister David Cameron and some of his staff that were with him were eating in a pizzeria in the Chicago airport. And the British press was absolutely amazed. They said, look at this. They've had all of this heavy security, you know, like we see at Bilderberg and the G7 groups, and they had this heavy security around these people, and yet here they are, just eating in an ordinary pizzeria. We think it was a Pizzeria Uno from everybody's best guess. Here they are just having pizza. So it was widely reported at the time. And then later they learned that this is where they decided to hold the Brexit referendum in order to keep UKIP from coming at them and overtaking them, as I point out in the rearview mirror. Now I can imagine perhaps how this happened. You know, they're here at the pizzeria place, and maybe somebody came up to them and said, do you want it to go? They said, yes, that's it. We'll do takeout. And from that idea, they had Brexit. Now, it was interesting, and I think we need to focus. So we're going to talk about the lies from David Cameron as he's represented Brexit, and how we've now seen this European superstate in a week after they had the vote, all the things that he was saying were not true. We're now seeing those things come out as being revealed as true. But first, I want to take a look at the man who really made this happen. He took a victory lap at the European Parliament, and this is what he had to say.
You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? And the reason you're so upset, the reason you're so angry, has been perfectly clear from all the angry exchanges this morning. You, as a political project, are in denial.
Now, as Farage pointed out, they always offer it as an economic opportunity. But what they do is they create an economic crisis. We've seen this game over and over again. Crisis, solution. And the solution is more political union. And as he pointed out, they even have the Lisbon Treaty. He said they brought that sovereignty in the back door even when Netherlands and France said we don't want any part of it. Now, as we had the lead up to the Brexit vote, I think it's very interesting to analyze what was said by David Cameron just before the vote and what was revealed just after the vote. Here's David Cameron talking about the lies of UKIP.
People are getting through the letterboxes leaflets from Leave saying, basically, Turkey's going to join the EU, not true. There's going to be a European army with Britain in it, not true. And we give £350 million a week to Brussels, not true. Now look, if we want to vote to leave this organisation, let's vote to leave it. But let's not do it on the basis of three things that are completely untrue.
All right, well, let's just...
Okay, we now see, just a week later, that those lies, and the key one I want to focus on is the European army. We see now that that was true. It was not a lie. He said, if you're going to get out for other reasons, but these reasons that are being given are just simply not true. Well, we saw this narrative being put out by Politico, by The Guardian. The Guardian put out about a month before, said, is there a secret plan to create a European army? It's like, no, not actually. Politico said, we're going to wage war on the myth of a European army. They say Brexiteers are tapping into deep-rooted tropes of Euroscepticism guaranteed to alarm the British public. And of course, one of those tropes was that there was going to be a European superstate with an army, which we now see is true. They say, well, going back to March 2015, this is Politico articles, European Commission President Juncker advocated a common European army as a way to increase the EU's standing on the world stage, not least in the eyes of Russia. So even they admitted at that point, well, yes, they've made a lot of statements about this. And of course, they've been widely reported in multiple areas what they wanted to do. But they said, just as David Cameron said about Turkey, and we didn't have the clip there, but he goes on to say in that meeting where he was being questioned by the public, he said, oh, Turkey, yeah, I would love to have Turkey in, but it ain't going to happen for another 30 years. Okay, but it would happen. And this is going to happen. They've already laid out the plans for this. Now, going back to what The Guardian said about a month before the Brexit vote, they said EU army plans kept secret from voters. They said that was a front page story on Friday's Times. And if the claim sounded familiar, that was because just 2 days earlier, a retired British Army commander had claimed in the Daily Express that the EU was moving inexorably towards full political union and all that comes with it, including a unified armed forces. And then they go on to say, is there a serious imminent chance of this happening? Oh, no, said The Guardian, okay? They said EU defense policy remains in the hands of European governments, not the EU executive. Contrary to reports, it will not propose an EU army. Okay, now, that was a month before Brexit. Less than a week after Brexit, we had a Polish television network release a detailed document that was put together by France and by Germany, by the foreign ministers of both of those countries. Now, this document was not written over the weekend. It was released on the Monday following the Brexit vote. This was something that had been developed for quite some time. They don't produce documents like this in these massive bureaucracies as a joint statement between two foreign ministers of two countries without a lot of advanced preparation. So at the time all this was being downplayed in the press, they were well into this document. I want to look at this document with you and ask you to honestly think about this. Are they talking about creating a European army under an executive power? And we will see very clearly that they are. Now, here's some excerpts from that. They say, our two countries, that's France and Germany, share a common destiny. We will therefore move further towards political union in Europe. And we will invite other Europeans to join us in the endeavor. Well, you see, it's not about political union, they say. They go on to say, France and Germany will therefore promote a more coherent and more assertive Europe on the world stage. They're going to project power, folks. They say the main challenges ensure the security of our citizens confronted with growing external and internal threats. We want to establish a stable cooperative framework for dealing with migration and refugee flows, boost the European economy, so forth and so on, and move towards the completion of economic and monetary union. So now this is all still about political union, a closer, tighter European superstate. Now we go to the next section, a European security compact. This is where the army comes in. They say conflict is being imported into our continent. By who? By the European Union. The terrorist threat is growing, feeding on complex networks inside and outside Europe and stemming from crisis zones. Providing security for Europe, as well as contributing to peace and stability globally, is at the heart of the European project. And of course, the European project is just a step towards a global world government. We see the EU, they go on to say, as a key power in its neighborhood, but also as an actor for peace and stability with global reach, tackling global challenges, a rules-based international order underpinned by strategic stability. Think about that. This is all about globalism, folks. This is not even about a European superstate. This is about a world superstate. They are a building block toward that. This is why they hate to see it unraveling, as it appears that it may. They're talking about global challenges, and they're talking about a rules-based international order. Who's going to write those rules? The same people that write our secret treaties that our elected representatives are not even allowed to read, okay? Now, they say to respond to this challenge, Germany and France propose a European security compact, which encompasses all aspects of security and defense dealt with at the European level. They go on to say, France and Germany will promote the EU as an independent and global actor able to leverage its unique array of expertise, tools, civilian and military. Now, they go on. The EU should be able to plan and conduct civil and military operations more effectively with the support of a permanent civilian military chain of command. Do you understand that? A permanent civilian military chain of command. The EU should be able to rely on employable high readiness forces, provide common financing for its operation. How are they going to do that? They will have European Union superstate taxes. Within the framework of the EU, member states will establish permanent structured cooperation in the field of defense. EU member states should consider establishing a standing maritime force. Understand this. They're talking about a permanent standing army. They're talking about a permanent standing navy that will be able to project military force, okay? And they are also talking about an executive who is going to control that. Then they tackle their other objective, and that is their migration policy. They say there shall be no unilateral national answers to the migration challenge. In other words, folks, the individual nation states are not going to have a say. This is all going to be done by the centralized European government. They also talk about completing economic and monetary union. Now, understand they're going to have a full-time European president. They say they're going to harmonize regulation and oversight, as well as corporate taxation. All the taxes, all the regulation is going to come from there, including common social minimum standards. It is a complete European state. Now, they have tried to do everything they can to mess with the markets, to scare people about this, to try to get them to back down. But you need to understand and look at the way Nigel Farage addressed the European Parliament. He made it very clear that it was in the interest of everyone to move forward and just to have a real economic union, which is the way this started. Here's what he had to say.
Between your countries and my country, we do an enormous amount of business in goods and services. That trade is mutually beneficial to both of us. That trade matters. If you were to decide to cut off your noses, to spite your faces, and to reject any idea of a sensible trade deal, the consequences would be far worse for you than it would be for us.
So this is a European superstate. This is what they said was not going to happen. And yet we all knew that it was there. And we've been proven right.